The Devil Turned to a Good One by Krishna M. Billion years ago, in a far, far away kingdom, there was a king who was very known for his cruelty, named King Antonius III. He is the kind of king who never cared for his people. He treats his servant as if they don't matter to him at all. He gives punishment to those who disobeyed him without even thinking how much it could make them suffer. He only cares for himself, and what matters to him the most is that he gets what he wants and the power that he has. One day, Martha went to the palace and she wanted to talk to the king and tell him that her husband is not going to go to his work because he got sick. But instead of listening to her explanation, the king told her, "No, he is the palace gardener, and I want him to be here right now, or else you wouldn't like what I am going to do to your family." And because of her fear, she hurriedly went home and decided that she will be the one to clean the garden. But the king didn't let her. The king went to their house and forced Robert to go to the palace and to do his work all day, all night while it was raining. Since then, Robert became unhealthy and got weaker as days goes by. And later on, he died. Because of that, Robert's family blamed the king for his death. Until the day has already come that the king needs to find his queen. He asked his most trusted servant to gather all of his people for a very special announcement. And then the servant went to the plaza and shouted, "Ladies and gentlemen, the king wanted me to tell you that we will be having an assembly later in the afternoon in the palace. He will now choose the girl he's going to spend the rest of his life with. And those who will not attend will be punished. That's all. Thank you." And then the people started complaining and complaining. "I hope I won't be one of his choices. I really hope to. I don't want to be his queen. Yes, I am. I am not going to come. I don't want to be his queen." Because of his attitude and the way he ruled his kingdom, obviously, no one ever wanted to be his queen. Meanwhile, Martha went home to tell her daughters about the announcement. "Alia and Aliana, come here. We are going to go to the palace later in the afternoon. The king will now choose his queen." And then the two sisters went to their room. "Sister Alia, I am sure you will be his queen." "Oh no, don't say that. You know how much I hate him for what he did to us. He killed our father. But it's so impossible that you won't be chosen as his queen. You are so beautiful and kind-hearted woman inside and out. I am very much aware with the way he used his power against his people. And all my life, I never dreamed of being his queen. I am not going to come." "But sister, as if you have a choice. You are also aware with the way he gives punishment." "I don't care. I just don't want to see him." And then the afternoon came. And just like what the king wanted, all of his people attended. And Alia, even it was against her will, he came to the palace. And the king, being a harsh one, he didn't even make time to do. He stood up and looked at the crowd, looking for something. Then his eyes stopped on a very beautiful girl named Alia. He stared at her for a minute, and the people started to murmur something. "Oh no, Alia! Alia, you will be his queen!" And he kept on staring at her for a minute. And then he said, "Quiet! I already found her. You know who you are. Come here in front." But Alia just kept on staring at him. She fearlessly met his gaze. "I said come here in front. Don't you ever test my patience, woman." And then Alia bravely walked as she got to the king. The king smiled and said, "Good girl." And then he looked at the crowd and said, "All of you, this girl beside me is going to be my queen. From now on, she's all mine and no one could touch her but me. Only me." And then Alia looked at her family as if she's telling them that she's okay and she can do it. And then the king grabbed her arm and harshly said, "You will be now staying with me whether you like it or not." And with that, he left the crowd speechless. Since that day, Alia's peaceful life began to be a nightmare. And just like what she had expected, having a queen won't even change the king. Ever since she had stayed in the palace, the king never treated her like a queen. In fact, he is making her do some household chores together with the maids. He's really treating her like a slave. And all of his servants couldn't tell her family because of their fear. And even Alia wanted to tell her family, the king never gave her a chance to talk to them. And she knows that once she tells them, they will come over and ask her to go home. And he knows how powerful King Antonius III is. He will surely make her family suffer. So, instead of doing so, she chose not to and just continue her life there. Years have passed and the king's treatment towards her didn't change. He is still the same King Antonius III. Nothing has changed. One time, he asked her to clean the palace all alone, and it took 3 days for her to finish doing it. And while the king is passing by on the corridor, he saw her crying silently on the corner of a room. And he don't know why, he suddenly felt something. And that was the time that he realized something has been too much, and seeing her like that makes his heart ache. Aya's life continued, and it seems like he's getting used to the kind of life that she has. And one time, after cleaning the room, she sat beside their king-size bed. And she reminisced what she had gone through and realized something. What a strong woman you are, Alia. I am so proud of you. And then she closed her eyes and couldn't help it but to cry. And then, later on, she felt a hand gently caressing her face. She opened her eyes and found a very beautiful eyes. And that was Mariano, the gardener. I'm sorry. Did I woke you up? No, it's okay. I also need to do something. I was about to get something here when I saw you sleeping peacefully. And after all these years, that was the first time that I saw you like that. And then he stared at her for a minute and said, You know what? You really look so beautiful, Queen Alia, inside and out. I really wonder why the king is treating you like that. You really deserve a better treatment. He must at least appreciate your efforts. Why don't you go out of this mess? Don't you miss your family? And then Queen Alia got to think deeper. Yes, she missed her family so much. But she knows how impossible it is for her to go out of the palace. She's now stuck there for the rest of her life. And then Mariano patted her shoulder and said, Come here. I can be your shoulder to lean on. You can cry on me. And then she let herself lean on him and cry on his shoulder. He hugged her, and later on she found herself hugging him back. They stayed on that position until the door opened, and they hardly stood up as if they saw a lion who just got out of his cage. Both of you, what do you think are you doing? And the king grabbed her arm and held it tightly, making her cry a little bit. And then he ordered his men to throw the gardener outside the palace. The king looked at her and his dark eyes turned into a good one when he saw her crying because of what he did. And then he said sorry, and Alia was so surprised with how gently he let her arm go. Ever since that day, everything has changed on the way the king acts in the palace and how he treats everyone around him, especially her. Until one night, while Queen Alia was sitting on the garden, he sat beside her. No one dared to start a conversation. And Alia was so surprised when she was about to stand up and the king held her hand and sincerely looked at her. What are you doing, king? My Queen Alia, I am sorry. I am sorry for all the things I've done to you. I am sorry for not treating you the way that you deserve. I should have loved you rather than to mistreat you. That's okay. You are the king. You have the power to do what you want. Yes, I am the king. And as your king, I should have treated you like a queen. I know I have disappointed you all, but I really want to make it all right now. I have decided to do a public apology tomorrow, hoping that it's not yet too late for me to say sorry and for me to be a better king. And then he stared at her and uttered the word that made her stand. My Queen Alia, I love you. I really do. Then he paused for a while and said, The moment I laid my eyes on you the first time I saw you, believe it or not, you got my heart. Yes, I know it's unbelievable because of the way that I have treated you. But believe me, when I say I love you, I really do. She couldn't find a word to say, so they just stayed on that position until they have decided to go to their bed. And that night, while they were sleeping, she stared at him. She caressed her face and she realized something. And she couldn't believe how his simple sorry and confession melted her heart. And then he told her, I love you, my king. You are now forgiven. And then the next day, the king gathered all his men. They are all confused and doesn't have any idea with what is happening. Beside him is the queen holding his stand tightly. And he stood up and said, Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I know you are all confused, but let me tell you this. I am sorry. I am sorry for all the things I've done. I know I've been a heartless one to all of you. But now, I am sincerely asking for a forgiveness. And I'm now going to be the king that you all deserve. And that's a promise. And then the king also went to Queen Alia's house and said sorry to her family. And asked formally for their daughter's hand. Days have passed and the king really did what he had promised. And Queen Alia thought that it's all now gonna be okay. That they could now live happily. But no, it didn't happen. Because one morning, she woke up without having the king beside her. She hardly went out of the room, hoping that the king is just having a walk on the palace. But it was already afternoon and still there is no King Antonius III. And then, she waited for him. But, it was already afternoon and she decided to take a rest. While taking a rest, she found a small piece of paper, and that was a letter from the king. The letter said that the king went to a war early morning with his men. And at the end part of it is a promise from the king. I'll be back, my queen, and that's a promise. She waited for the king until midnight, but the king didn't come back. And then the next morning, the king's men went home and then they got a news that really broke her heart into pieces. The king died during the war. She couldn't find a word to say, so she just cried and cried and cried and cried. Days and weeks have passed and her life is getting worse as days goes by. She chose not to believe the news and hold on to what he had promised. And all of the king's people is very worried about her because she's just staying alone in the room and not talking to anyone, even her family. And then one night, while waiting for the king, she looked at the sky and then she asked, Why do I have to suffer like this? Do I really deserve this kind of treatment? Do I really deserve this kind of pain? Should I still hold on to what he had promised or should I now move forward and accept the fact that she's now truly gone? Then he closed her eyes and cried. And then after a while, she decided to go to their bed. And it was midnight when she felt a hand gently touching her face. And she was so shocked with what she saw. The king is now staring at her while uttering the words, I am now back, my queen. She didn't say anything and just let herself cry on his shoulder and hug him. And then the next morning, they had a celebration. They gathered all of their people. They are all confused but chose not to ask anything and just welcomed their king. They had a beautiful wedding ceremony. And then all of their men lived peacefully. And meanwhile, King Antonius III and Queen Alia lived happily ever after together with their children. And that's all. Thank you.